Hey everybody, this is Hayden from Connect. Thanks for tuning back in. So this video we're just going to lightly touch on the advanced editor and get to help you get to grips with how it builds the M code or mashup language in Power BI. People always ask, do I need to know M to get on in Power BI? The truth is you don't. It helps, but actually getting to know how Power Query works first of all is quite an important step. A lot of things that you can do in Power Query, they don't need you to know M code, as Power Query will do it automatically for you. So I'm just going to jump into the Power Query. So here I have a data set that's been imported from Excel. We touched on parameters in a previous video. Right, so what I'm going to talk around on this one is really show you some examples. Now, we've imported a list of tables, and if you see here the applied steps. So the applied steps are effectively transformations that you make in your data. A little bit like adding formulas into an Excel spreadsheet, but quite different. So as you can see here, it's built up a source. So it's looking for the source of the data, yeah, which is the Excel workbook file. It's navigation. I told it to import the carriers in that data set. And then Power BI has automatically done this. It's gone and transformed the column types. Yeah, so it's defined them as numbers or text based on what it looks like. However, as you can see in this import, it hasn't actually set the column IDs. So to get that first row here, what we want to do is in your home, you have this function, use first row as headers. What that's then done, it's promoted the headers, it's give you an applied step, and it's changed the values again. You might not need to do that, so we can delete that applied step. If you look in your advanced editor, let's have a little walkthrough of how it's structured. So your let is where is effectively your primer, your trigger for all of the functions and calculations you want to make in Power Query. Your in, it states the final transformation that you want to use. You can do a little bit more advanced work in here, but I'm not going to cover that in this session. So how does Power Query effectively work then? So it's important to know that when you're looking at this, you see that we've got these applied steps here, change type and promote headers. Yeah, they proceed with the hashtag and in speech marks. If I'm just going to go back and rename this just to show you. If you rename this, you can F2 or right click on these, rename promote headers to top. If I click on the advanced editor again, it no longer has a hashtag and it no longer has speech marks. So the hashtag and speech marks are used when there are spaces to give it a single value. So how does this work then? So as you can see, each row, if you click on display options up here, you can enable word wrap where there's lots of columns, lots of information in your rows, sorry, to see visible on one page. But just so you can see the structure, I'm going to take that away. So we've defined the source. Power Query did that automatically. It's the Excel workbook. Carriers defined name is the next step. And what it's doing, it equals the source. So it's actually looking at the transformation before. And a good way of thinking of these applied steps is almost it's like building a virtual table in Power Query. And then the next step is querying that virtual table. So here, change type, it's doing a table, transform column types, but it's looking at the carrier defined name here, which is the previous step. Promote headers to top, that's table.promote headers, that's the mashup language, that's the M, but it's looking at the change type step here. Okay, so it logically works through the previous step. Now you can be clever here. I'll show you some other examples where there's more transformations, but in the in statement here, I could change this to say I don't want to look at promote headers to top. If I do it properly, I'm going to copy change type, paste it in there, click done. Now what you'll see is all of my applied steps have vanished here. That's what happens. But effectively, Power Query is ignoring this row, and we've told it only to go as this far. That's only if you want to do that. That's just an example to show you. So I'm going to unchange that. Now I'm going to go into my shipments table. I'm going to make some changes here. So salesperson, I've got the salesperson ID and I've got the salesperson table. Okay, let's promote headers there again because it hasn't done that. Salesperson and name. So you can see here actually there's a spelling mistake. If I change that, a new applied step has come up. Advanced editor, rename columns, and it's changed. Rename columns from the change type step to salesperson to salesperson. Done. Next, let's have a look here. So I've got some dates and times that have been imported. So the date of the order, the time of the order, and the order date time column. Don't need all of these, but for this example, as you can see, I've imported just a time value from Excel. Because it doesn't have a date, it's imported it as the 31st of the 12th, 1899. Now, as numbers in date ranges start the 1st of the 1st, 1900 as the integer of 1, because there was no date applied in Excel to the date, it's gone to 0, which is the day before. All I want to do here is set that to just time. That'll remove that problem. Okay. Now I'm going to scroll across here. What I have is some cost values. I'm going to set these as a currency, which is a fixed decimal number. So that's added a change type there. I'm just going to rename that. Set cost as currency. So if I do another similar step, if I set this as currency as well, you see that it hasn't added a new applied step. It's using the previous step. So up here, table transform columns. It's using the rename columns applied step, virtual table, and it's setting the order time to time, plan cost to currency, and actual cost to currency. And I can keep doing that. So if I wanted to then do something different, I'm going to show you. I'm going to delete this column here. Rate type, don't need it. If I now go back and set the demurrage cost column as a currency, you see that it adds a new applied step rather than consolidate it there. So some best practice for you is to try and do as much as you can as possible. Sorry, I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to delete that step. So I'm going to set the demurrage cost here as a currency. So it's reducing the amount of applied steps and virtual tables that it's building through that process. Okay, so what does that look like in the advanced editor? So as you can see here, source, shipments, define name, but we've added change type. Sorry, we haven't added that, that was already added. We've added the rename columns, which we've changed salesperson to person, and we've added set cost as currency. Now what we can do, I can point this row, rather than look at rename columns, where we've got the change type here, sorry, where this is looking at the previous step, I could ignore that step, I might not need it. In practical reasons, you'd delete it, but you could change this here. So this is now looking at the row above. So if I hit done, that renamed columns, even though it's there, it's not actually working because this applied step is jumping one ahead. Okay, simply go back and change that if you want that. So what you can start to do is build up multiple tables within your advanced editor and maybe append them back together. If there's two things you want to do to the table to break it out and bring it back together, you could start to do that through this cycle, and you could do a merge table within your own data without having to create two queries. Okay, you can also move that before that. Advanced editor again, and that is effectively restructuring. So this is now looking at set cost as currency. You've got to be careful with this because if I was to change the navigation before source, it won't let me. If I was to move, so if I was to move promote headers before navigation, move before, it won't work because there are certain things that need to be in the logical sequence. It needs to know the defined name of the source, which now it's looking at the promoted headers. So it's not working. So if I move that after, there you go, all back to normal. So the more transformations you have in here, the better. Another way to sort of get your head around how M code works. Now, we can start to add some columns and use some of the really great tools that Power BI has. If I look at the salesperson column here, in add column, you've got this these three. You can invoke a custom function. We haven't got functions in this model. We can create a custom column, or we can create columns from examples. So I'm going to click on that. Now what I want to do is separate here the first name and last name. So the first name, the way that this is structured, it's last name, comma, first name. So if I just type in Merrill, what it's done, it's identified all of the first names using the logic that I've typed there. It's using the M, it's a text after delimiter, name column, and the space. So I want everything after the space. If I click this as first name, okay. So this is saying it's inserted text after delimiter, which is effectively advanced editor. What it did do, so it added text after delimiter. Doesn't make much sense in terms of naming it, so I'm going to put add first name. I can do this similar. I can identify the second name by using the same process. Add column. So it hasn't quite understood the logic just yet. There you go, a couple of examples, and the AI built in has brought that down. So if I just want the second name here, the surname, if I do the same, column from examples, call that last name, and Coffrey. What it hasn't done, it hasn't understood the logic just yet, so you can keep going. Chen, there you go. It started to build up all of the names before, so it's split by delimiter. It's using this information here. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to rename this. Rename. Added last name. If I go back into the advanced editor, you can see how it's starting to build up that information. It's using the add first name, it's calling the column last name, and it's going through the cycle. This is a really great way of you starting to understand how M works by using some of these built-in functions and having a look at it. And that's it really. That's just a quick overview of M. It's a quick overview of Advanced Editor. You know, the really key thing here is understanding how these steps work, that they refer back to the previous step, or you can move those around. So when you're starting to build in your own code, you can start to see the structure and you can start to understand the structure of M. So if you just find us for the first time, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and stay up to date with all the future videos, and I'll see you next time.